and the Global Belief Project, are those nonprofits?
Yeah.
Okay.
They get nice tax breaks for 501c3, 501c7, all those things. Yes.
So a lot of times churches will send these enormous groups because they want the children to have an experience or just a vision of what the mission field is. Because in the United States we don't have much of a vision because we don't have exactly what you're talking about, watching parents work as missionaries in their local jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the solution to then giving students a vision for missions, what is the solution to that?
Yeah. So I went into that a lot more detail in my paper because you can't just say this is the wrong way. You have to have an idea of how to offer a solution. And so I think there's two main keys. And I talked to some career missionaries and then also some missionary kids, and I was just what was it like hosting these teams? What's the way to do this well? Because long-term missionaries will say, we want people to come see, the ministry that we're doing, but there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. So I think the first two things is what we call them and how we pay for them. So, just as anything, if you give a name to it, it has a certain, persona or, perception. And so if we call something a short-term mission trip, it kind of sounds like you're going to do a lot of ministry. Whereas you're actually right, it's more of going to develop a vision and develop a global perspective and possibly serve the missionaries who are living there and who are on base. So we didn't come up with a different name, and I'm not saying I have the perfect solution to that, but something like an educational trip with a service project day. Because you think taking a group in to serve at an orphanage for a day is a good thing to do. It does not solve the global orphan crisis. But what it can do is it can really serve the workers who are there all of the time, and it can give a vision and educate people. So I think what we call it can have a significant impact on that. How we pay for it. My personal opinion, I'm not saying this is absolutely right 100% of the time, raising money for a mission trip would be just the same as raising money for a study abroad, is kind of how I see it, because it's a lot of education. So when I asked missionaries resoundingly, what they said was, we want people to come, but we want them to come teachable and humble, willing to learn from us, not coming and saying this is what we're going to do, and think that they're going to do all this missionary mission work. Gary Smitty said, if I'm going to host a team, I want them to come and live as I live. And they had a team actually refuse to do that. He said, okay, you're going to live with the missionaries here in their houses, not in a hotel, and you're going to get up with them and you're going to do exactly what they do. And they said, no, we can't do that. And I was like, they have no right to say that. But anyways. And then I was talking to Drury Bell, who grew up a missionary kid in Uganda and graduated from RVA. And what she said was, if teams come humble and teachable and let it be missionary-led instead of church organization-led, then it's successful. And so I think there's really healthy ways to do that, because it does change you. Living in Brazil for 3 months and going to Mexico for 7 days changed my perspective, and I'm very grateful for that. But more than anything, I'm grateful for the missionaries who come and let me learn, because I was more work for them than I was help, probably. But hopefully that means that in the future I'll be more help. So yeah, I think how we pay for it, what we call it, and it needs to be missionary-led. Those were the things that I found.
So how do you think they should pay for it?
Well, if you're okay with raising money for a study abroad, then you're okay with just seeing it in the same category as that. I also just think you tend to value something more when you have skin in the game. So paying for some of it yourself, or organizing fundraisers where you're actually working for it. Again, just kind of healthy work ethic methods. I don't think it's a bad thing to go on short-term mission trips. You just have to be really careful how you do them.
This is more about you, but do you have a vision of how you're gonna get involved with this in the future? What is? Yeah. How are you taking this to the next level?
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah. Well, about that. So one of the things that I had to turn in for this project that wasn't necessarily part of the presentation was last semester I spent all semester working with Texas Tech Small Business Development. And I had to come up with it. Well, I gave it to Dr. McIntyre, but he's not here anymore. But I gave it to him, and it's a very intense document that has a bunch of financial stuff in it that technically it's a business model with the double bottom line of meeting your financials but then also serving a social purpose. And technically I could take that to a bank and it's a complete business model and ask for a loan. I'm not doing that right now because I just want to graduate in like 7 weeks. But I've had a lot of different ideas over the years. When I was, for probably like a span of like 8 years, from like age 8, well, maybe not that long, I don't know. I wanted to have an orphanage, kind of like a school. I cleaned out my stuff over Christmas break and I had a million blueprints of what this school was going to look like. And it was all self-sustaining. I had greenhouses and orchards and everything. I mean, like, I didn't have to leave the property, you know? I'm not saying that's the best idea either. It wasn't my 8-year-old mind. But a couple different things definitely appeal to me. One would be a business that's meeting a social bottom line. You know, the business that I hypothetically created with Texas Tech Small Business Development was a fitness center, but the purpose of it was to employ populations that often struggle to find employment. It was mainly focused on those who have gotten out of prison and those who have aged out of the foster care system. That's huge for me. Kids age out of the foster care system, I think it's $20,000 a year, turn 18 without ever having been adopted. And if you look at the statistics, they end up in prison, on the streets, pregnant, homeless, no GED, nothing. And that's, you know, sometimes, yeah. And I've worked foster care camp several summers. And when people are given the tools and empowered, they go far. You know, instead of just, they don't need another social program, they don't need another, you know, government program. So I'd love to work somehow and employ, you know, those who've aged out of the foster care system in some sort of business. And then the second thing that really appeals to me is school, as far as just like, you know, teaching English or having some sort of educational model. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know yet. I'm just taking a year and gonna figure that out. But so there's definitely been a couple things that I would like to do, and we'll just see what doors the Lord opens. So, thank you guys.
Would you say that there was a moment or experience that helped shape or reshape a missional perspective during the course of this capstone?
Like while I was working on the capstone?
Yeah, is there one standalone moment or experience that you could say helped shape or reshape the missional perspective?
I don't know necessarily while I was working on the capstone if there were those. There's two that I can identify in my life in general. One was the 3 months in Brazil, and one was my week the first year at Royal Family Kids Camp, which is the foster care camp that I worked at. For those of you who know me well, you know that it does not take a lot to make me laugh or cry, you know, just very invested in whatever is going on. But I cried more that week at camp than I've ever cried in my entire life. And finding some sort of healing for that is something that really it's a motivator, I guess. So, compiling the research, it was more just like, they don't want to listen to me for 3 hours, what am I going to cut out?
So you say there's not a divide between the spiritual and the secular way of living life. With that lifestyle, is it more of an active or a passive way to live? Like, as in, do we seek out conversations with people who don't share our beliefs, or do we kind of sit back and lead as an example and become one of us?
Yes, both. So I think that's situational discernment. That's a really good question, because that's something that it's really hard to discern. Like, say something, do I not say something? You know, if I'm going to use my dad as an example, it's probably the easiest way to do this. People, you know, he never when he was a supervisor, it's not like before he sent his guys out they repaired gas main. Okay, so the gas leaks all around Indianapolis. I was going to say, all right, everybody bow your heads, we're going to pray before I send you out on your job. No, he didn't do that, you know, if that's, you know, an active or whatever. But they saw, you know, his integrity and his honesty. You know, he said when he said he was going to do something, he did it. There was one point where, he's working on his master's right now. I told him I'd race him. He was working on his undergrad while I was in high school, and he beat me by 2 months, but it's fine. And so, but he said, you know, I will go back and get my education, you know, if this, and this. And they told him later, anybody else would have just said it to get the job, but you actually went back and got it. So that's what I would say is kind of more passive, just kind of like living a lifestyle that exemplifies, Christian principles. And then when given the opportunity, someone comes in and says, hey, like, this is going down in my life, using discernment to say, hey, can I pray for you about that? And so then that would be a more active. So the passive is just, operating in integrity. They see the difference in how, he treats his 6 children and his wife, and then they see also that if they need it, they can go to him for intentionality and intentional action. So it's a combination of both, and it's one of those frustrating areas where there is not an Excel spreadsheet formula to tell you when to do either one. So.
Thank you, Molly.
Mhm.
Good job.